The VA failing our nation's heroes once again, acknowledging its hand in creating a huge population of opiate-addicted veterans. In 2016 alone, the VA treated more than 66,000 vets for opioid use disorders while lacking sufficient rehab programs. Andrew McKenna was a Marine and DOJ prosecutor whose life was upended by heroin, spurred by opiates, but he's come back from it strongly, and he shares his book, Sheer Madness, From Federal Prosecutor to Federal Prison, and joins us now to react. Andrew, thanks for being here this morning.
Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
And tell me about this crisis that our veterans are facing with opiates.
Well, you know, we have this epidemic across the country of opioid use disorder. People are not getting the adequate treatment that they need, especially veterans. They're coming from a unique position. They're coming back with a lot of trauma from the wars. And we find in the treatment community that trauma and addiction go hand in hand. And what's happening is the VA's created, and they acknowledge this, they've created this massive group of people that are now opiate addicted.
Yeah.
And then they drew back. They didn't wean off the opioids. These are very powerful drugs.
Yeah, they are.
You know, and so what's somebody to do? Go through withdrawals. They're dealing with trauma. They can't get treatment. And so they go to the street for pills. Now, a pill costs $40. A bag of heroin costs $3.
Sure. Tell me about your own story then. How does this happen? How did it happen for you? And what's that lesson for veterans?
Well, it happened the same way for me. I hurt my back in the Marine Corps. It was a training mission. I was a lawyer for Marine Corps. I was non-combatant. But I hurt my back, and I couldn't do anything about it. I went with the Justice Department, and I went to a civilian doctor, and he said, how many Percocet do you think you need? Now, pain has to be treated. Doctors have to have the freedom to treat pain, but it has to be done responsibly. I went through a difficult divorce and custody battle, fell into depression, as so many veterans do for other reasons, and ultimately I turned to heroin. And it's a house of cards.
Take us inside your head. You get these drugs, you're dealing with all of these difficulties. Where does that lead?
Well, it leads to absolute destruction. It's a house of cards. You cannot maintain consistent opioid use. And here's the point for the public. Nobody wants to be a heroin addict, right? It's an absolute life of misery.
And no vet wants that.
No vet wants that. No vet deserves that.
Yeah.
We have failed once again the most important segment of our society other than children.
So I've heard this time and time again. As a platoon leader in Iraq and guys I served with in Afghanistan, they come home, the VA can't help them, so they hand them a bag full of pills or multiple bags full of pills. The VA has learned a little bit from that and tried to dial that back. But as you've pointed out, the facilities are not sufficient to see them, so now they're waiting 15, 30, 45 days just for an appointment, let alone a prescription or the proper mental health care. What is the solution at this point? Well,
having somebody wait, they reduced the wait for acute care from 29 days to 4 days. Well, 4 days for an opiate addict is essentially 4 days of playing Russian roulette, right? You don't have that time. So what we have to do is we have to open it up to the private sector. And this is something that President-elect Trump has talked about. Open it up to the private sector. Have TRICARE, which is typically military benefits, or VA benefits, you know, bring us into the private sector. I work with addiction campuses. I spend my day just getting people placed into quality treatment programs. Not where they have to spend $100,000 for a month, but let's give our veterans what they deserve, access to the private sector.
So you're talking about giving them a choice. You're saying if you can go to the VA facility, great, and if it works for you, great. If not, then go to a private provider in real time.
Why can't we do that?
Why can't we?
Why can't we? Well, I don't know. Is it bureaucracy?
Is there something special about mental health care or opiates or something that we need to be... I mean, obviously there are certain things the VA does very well and specializes in, but at the same time, you know, whether or not someone's addicted to an opiate, you'd think that on the civilian side, there are also professionals that deal with that as well.
Absolutely. And what we deal with day in and day out is a co-occurring, either mental health issue, co-occurring with an addiction issue. At addiction campuses, I mean, we focus on trauma because there's such a relationship between trauma and addiction. It's not that difficult to get our minds around the solution. It's just that Congress and the administration have to step up and say, look, if the VA can't handle it, which they've proven that they cannot handle it, right? And it's a massive organization. But if they can't handle it, then we have to turn to the private sector and give these guys a choice.
Andrew, you pay attention to this, both healthcare, addiction, the VA. Why have they not stepped up so far?
I just can't I can't figure that out. It can't be a monetary issue.
It's not.
right?
We've spent billions and billions more every year.
Right. And so now we're having veterans dying, you know, day in and day out, becoming heroin addicted or opioid addicted. Somebody needs to step up and say enough is enough. We've already seen, you know, certain people that are contenders for the top seat for the VA have withdrawn their names. You know what? I would withdraw my name too. You know,
well, it's government-run health care controlled by a bureaucracy, protected by unions and special interest groups, which can be a pretty tough code to crack. But
I agree with that.
If you give a veteran a choice, you can change that complex.
Don't we have to give the veterans a choice? I mean, we're sending them overseas. They're risking their lives. Their families are suffering. They're suffering. We can fix this problem.
Amen. Common sense stuff. Andrew McKenna, thanks for your expertise.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it.